午後のセッションですが、途中休憩を挟みまして、6名の先生方にご発表をいただきます。それでは、まずはじめに、セッション1、NTA、NTTA の政策利活用と題して、国際連合、UNFPA、タイ政府といった政府機関などで NTA、NTTA の利活用を促進されてきた3名の方々にご報告をいただきます。それでははじめに報告1、社会的包摂性と持続可能性、国連における開発アジェンダと NTA と題しまして、国際連合、経済社会局、人口統計部、人口問題担当官、ムンシム・ライ様よりご発表いただきたいと思います。Now I'd like to invite Dr. Lai to the stage.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I would like to express my gratitude to IPSS, National Institute of Population and Social Security Research. Thank you. And thank you to NUPRI for inviting me as well here. My name is Nicole Mansim Lai from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations in New York. Today, I would like to talk about United Nations Development Agenda and National Transfer Account. I want to start today's talk about two important UN manuals, the System National Account and the National Transfer Account. Let's start with this quote from Paul Samuelson, who was awarded with the Nobel Prize on his work on economic theory. Without measures of economic aggregates like GDP, policymakers would be adrift in a sea of unorganized data. The GDP and related data are like beacons that help policymakers stir the economy towards the key economic objective. Okay, in this woodcut of Hokusai, we can see that policymakers are in the boat, and we have the great waves of unorganized data. And thankfully, we have Mount Fuji at the back, the GDP and the accounting system that provide the guidance. Now, let's look at this. Richard Stone, who was awarded for his Nobel Prize in the work on national accounting system. So, when we look at his lecture provided in 1984, we can see he presented this diagram. From this diagram, it reminds us the fundamental importance of organizing our economies, economic facts into a coherent set of accounts. And then from these organized facts and theories come economic models. And from these models come policy. And so a coherent set of accounts is the foundation of development models, policy, plans, and actions. In 1947, the United Nations published the System of National Accounts, a coherent set of accounts to measure national economy. And this is based on the work of Richard Stone and others. In 2013, United Nations published the Manual on National Transfer Accounts. In 2024, we have the manual on national time transfer accounts. These represent a coherent set of accounts to measure the generational economy, pioneered by Ronald Lee, Andrew Mason, Gretchen Donhover, and others in the NTTA network, such as Professor Sang-Yup Lee, Professor Ogawa, Professor Masukura there, and myself, part of the team. In total, there will be 3 UN manuals in this series. The first on the generational economy, which has also been translated into Spanish and Russian. The second on gender economy. Thanks, Gretchen. And the third on what we might just call it, the just economy, which look at differences in generational economy by socio-economic groups, upcoming. Now let's return back to Hokosai's Great Wave. We can say that without national transfer account, policymaker would be adrift in a sea of unorganized data on population and the economy. National accounts make the national economy visible, but national transfer accounts make the generational economy visible. Now, I would like to talk about inclusive and sustainable development. The need for us to move beyond GDP by moving beyond averages, that is inclusive development, and by moving beyond today, that is sustainable development. 2 important principles were present from the very beginning of the global discussion on sustainable development. First, a long-run generational perspective. Second, the link between sustainability and inter- and intra-generational equity. Sustainable development is based on a long-run generational perspective. As Griel Brundtland here, the chair of the UN report on our common future, stated in 1987, humanity has the ability to make development sustainable to ensure that it meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. So the second principle is inclusive development. As Brundtland stated, even the narrow notion of physical sustainability implies a concern for social equity between generations, a concern that must be logically extended to equity within each generation. This principle linking sustainability and inclusion also extend to economic and fiscal sustainability. The twin goals of development, inclusion and sustainability, require new measure of economic activity that move beyond GDP. NTAs provide both. Leave no one behind is the central transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda SDG. NTA's disaggregation of national economy by population groups allows us to measure and plan for inclusive and sustainable societies. So one of the first principles of inclusion is making people visible in economic statistics. And NTAs, by making and moving this beyond averages, is to look at population groups, then allow people to see themselves in national economic accounts. Finally, NTA allow us to adopt long-term intergenerational thinking in reviewing the impacts of population change. And this long-term intergenerational thinking is a key component of what our United Nations Secretary General has called our common agenda. So I'm quoting what he said in his agenda. It is time to place long-term analysis, planning, and thinking at the heart of national governance and the multilateral system. We must expand our thinking and institutions across time. This is what NTA does. NTAs expand our thinking across time and generations. In conclusion, I would like to cite some examples of the use of NTAs throughout the UN system. For example, the United Nations DESA, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, provides capacity building training workshop on estimate and use of NTA, NTTA, and NIA. During the last 4 years, UN DESA has led 11 training workshops on NTA, 8 national workshops, and 3 regional workshops. We train about over 300 participants from 23 countries, and we have our DESA partners from regional economic commissions from Asia, ASCAP, and from Latin America, ECLEC, and our sister United Nations, UNFPA, our sister partner. So right now, we have this current project in DESA from 2023 to 26, which is National Inclusion Accounts. The aim of this project is to develop a third manual, National Inclusion Account Manual, and to train about 8 pilot countries in estimating them. The NTA data has been featured prominently in numerous UN reports on population and development, population aging, and on also Shaping Our Time, the economics report. That's all for today. Thank you so much for your attention.